Good afternoon, everybody. I am Elsie Namasetoni, the Subject Advisor for Economic and Management Sciences from Fezile Dabi District. We are continuing with the grade 8. Our topic is the government. And today we are going to look at the national budget as part of the function and the role of the government. And then in the national government and the national budget, what is it that learners should know? Number one, they should know the government revenue, which is the income, how the government generates its income. That is in the form of direct taxes and indirect taxes. And then the point number two that learners should know is the government expenditure on how is the government going to spend its income. That is on services such as education, health, housing, social grants, transport, security, etc. And then the influence of the national budget on the growth and redressing of economic inequalities. Now, the national budget. What is the national budget? How do we explain the national budget? The national budget is described as how much money the government expects to raise through taxes and borrowing, and how it plans to spend it on services like education, social welfare, and healthcare for the benefit of all South Africans. In short, it is a summary of the government's expected income on the one side and their planned expenditure on the other side. And then the South African national budget is presented in Parliament in February of every year. And this is the responsibility of the Minister of Finance, which is Ntate Enoch Gondongwana in our case. It has to be approved by the Parliament before it can be implemented. And the financial year for which it is approved is from the 1st April to the 31st March of the following year. When the income exceeds the expenditure, the budget has a surplus. And when the expenditure is more than the income, it is called a deficit. The government can borrow money locally or internationally if it does not have enough money. The government manages the income and expenses in line with the fiscal policy. And the fiscal policy contains guidelines and actions by government to be taken to manage the economy through taxes and the government spending. And then the government revenue, which is the government income. Now, the government generates its income or its revenue by charging taxes on their citizens, as well as on their businesses. Now, it is a compulsory payment made by the citizens without receiving a direct benefit from these payments. And then we have two types of taxes. We have the direct tax and also the indirect tax. Now, the government revenue, which is the taxes, the direct taxes and the indirect taxes, we are going to look at the difference between the direct tax and the indirect taxes. Now, in the case of the direct taxes, it is the money that is paid directly to the government by the businesses or individuals based on their income. Examples of direct taxes are, number one, we have the personal income tax, and then we also have the corporate or the business income tax. Now, in the case of the personal income tax, this is the tax that you pay on the money you earn, and we call it pay as you earn. The more you earn, that is the more you are going to be charged tax. And then the direct tax is based on the ability to pay. If you earn more, you have more wealth, or you earn large salaries, you pay more. And then this is called the progressive taxation. That is the system that is used in South Africa to tax people who earn money. And then we also, the second direct form of a tax is a corporate business tax, which is paid on the profits that are made by the businesses. Meaning, in the case of the personal income tax, the income tax is going to be different according to the incomes that are earned by the citizens. Whereas in the case of a corporate income tax, we have a fixed percentage that businesses are supposed to pay. And then the second type of tax is the indirect tax. Now, these are the taxes which are paid on the sale of goods and services by the owner of the business or the retailer. It is added to the price of the product and then paid by the consumer. Indirect tax is increasing the price of goods, meaning that the higher the indirect tax, the higher the selling price. And then the examples of the indirect taxes, we have the VAT, which is the value-added tax that we use in South Africa. And the rate currently is 15%. And then we also have the excise duties, which are levies that are on alcohol, tobacco, and related products. And then we also have a sin tax that is paid for products that we want people to avoid using them more so that they are not going to end up being a burden on the government because they are unable to work because they are now addicted to these substances. Another example of the indirect tax is the custom duties that are paid on import and export goods. We also have the fuel levy that is paid on the sale of petrol and diesel. And a percentage which is used for the road accident fund. And then we also have a sugar tax, which was introduced to discourage South Africans to buy less sugar products, which contribute to the diabetes and strokes, and also the obesity, to reduce the number of people that are obese, because this obesity leads to diseases. And then we also have the last type is the transfer duties, which is levied on the value of a property when it is bought. Meaning, if we are selling a house or we are selling land, then a transfer duty is the tax that is going to be charged on the products. And then we come to the government revenue, the government revenue, that is other types of revenue that the government can generate. So we also have properties that are rented by the government, and then they generate an interest for them, or a rent is paid on the properties. And then we also have dividends from the investments that are made by the government. And then we have loans that are provided by the government, and then they are going to be paid back as an income, or in case where the government does not have enough income, then they borrow money from other countries or they borrow money from other institutions. And then we also have the administrative incomes like the fines in the case of licenses and the license fees, the permits, the toll gates that are charged for their usage. Now we come to the government expenditure. How then is the government going to use that money that they generated? Now, the government expenditure indicates how the government spends its money to deliver important services to the public, as well as the financing of other projects that are going to be of benefit to the country. The government expenditure means the government spends large sums of money providing schools, educators, and textbooks to learners, teachers and furniture, meaning that this is the money that they spend on education, because all the departments are going to be allocated a certain amount of money. So for education department, they allocate money to spend on what we already mentioned: schools, educators, textbooks, and learners. And this we already talked about last time when we were talking about the government, especially the services that are provided by the government, either the national, the provincial, or the local government. Now, the Constitution of South Africa guarantees every individual the right to receive basic education. So the government provides these educational services because in South Africa, our education is free. To reduce poverty and unemployment, any country needs well-educated individuals, and the biggest portion of the budget is spent on education because we want to improve our state of the economy by providing skills to our citizens. And then another money is also spent on health. The South African Constitution guarantees all individuals the right to health. The government's health departments provide primary health care in a form of local clinics. The department is committed to the following: increasing the life expectancy, lowering levels of mother and child death, combating HIV and AIDS, and decreasing the burden of disease from TB, and strengthening the effectiveness of the health system. And this is the second biggest portion of the budget for our government. And then the third one, we also spend money as a government on social grants. And then it is a priority of the government to provide social support to the poor, as well as people who are not able to work due to age, illness, or disability. And then the government spend money on salaries of staff working on SASSA offices, child grants, all age grants, and foster care. And then we also have an expenditure. The other part is allocated for transport, where the Department of Transport is responsible for the regulation of public transport, rail transportation, civil aviation, shipping, freight, and motor vehicles. The department is also responsible for providing the infrastructure, that is providing for the roads, the bridges, the rail links, the airports and harbors that are needed for us to be able to be connected to other countries economically. And then housing is also allocated a portion, and then the government makes money available to provide housing and social grants to the poor citizens of the country. The RDP and low-income houses are examples of the money that is allocated for housing. This is one of the ways of reducing poverty and raising the standard of living for economically vulnerable individuals. And then the government also provides the social services such as recreation and cultural facilities. The building of stadiums, theaters are also examples of recreational and cultural services. And then the other part is then allocated for security, where the government is responsible for keeping the peace and enforcing law and order in the country. The rights and safety of all citizens must be protected, and peace and stability attract business investments which help the economy to grow. Government must therefore make sure that the police force is adequately staffed and trained to do their jobs and respect the rights of the people it serves. Now, the influence of the national budget on growth and redressing of economic inequalities. The influence of the national budget on growth. Number one, the national budget is the most important instrument of fiscal policy that the government can use to shape or stimulate the economic growth. To achieve this, the government has to make sure more goods and services are produced. To stimulate economic growth, the government has to spend its money in such a way that it encourages new businesses to be established and existing businesses to expand their output so that they grow and provide more employment and more income, because the more we have the businesses, the more we are going to have to generate our corporate taxes, money from our corporate taxes. And then the influence of the national budget on growth and redressing of economic inequalities continued. Some of the strategic priorities for growth and development includes the following: resolving the energy crisis, revitalizing agriculture, improve the productivity of labor and reduce workplace conflict, encourage private investment, encourage entrepreneurship, infrastructure development. Those are the ways that we can use to ensure that we have economic growth. And there are types of inequalities that need to be redressed. We need to redress the economic inequality as well as the social inequality. By the economic inequality, we mean the gap in the levels of wealth and income between the rich and the poor. Whereas social inequality means a situation in which certain groups of people do not have equal social status, social class, and access to resources. And then to close this presentation, we are going to finalize our inequality, the strategies to address the economic inequalities, where we provide social grants in almost a third of South African population, free health services to the poor, no-fee schools for 60% of the learners, housing, water, and electricity in poor communities, creating jobs for the poor and teach them the new skills that are in demand in our business. So this is how the national budget looks like in South Africa. Now, the last part will be that you are to complete the quiz. And here is the link that is provided. Just copy it in your phone and then answer the question to check whether you understood or you did not understand. And thank you very much for listening to me. And thank you for everything of the best. Thank you.